Joining the table, Republican representative from Georgia, Congressman Jack Kingston, and Republican representative from Arizona, Congressman Jeff Flake. Both are members of the important House Committee on Appropriations. So here's the deal. You guys need some help. Money, and the economy. There's a guy, Boyd, over there. He can be one of your advisors. You want to talk to Boyd. He's the co-author of this book, which you need to read.
Is it important?
Okay. And if you understand what plagues this country, this book will help you solve it.
It's an important
all right, all these things, you guys talking about debt limit, cuts, and all that. I mean, just, whoa, back up.
I'm just glad you're not quoted in here. That was very damaging.
No, it would help. And we'll get one for every member of Congress, and things will be okay.
They're on their way.
We've tried everything else.
America's going to be a better place. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. All right, let's get to the news, and then we'll talk about all of these different issues in a more serious level. But the book's good, Willie.
Thank you.
I like it. Congratulations. The New York Times reports that President Obama beefed up the team raiding Osama bin Laden's compound and made it big enough to fight its way out of Pakistan in case things got hostile. Senior U.S. officials tell the Times that the president also wanted to be prepared for a possible attack from local Pakistanis. The paper also reports that two groups were on standby, one to bury bin Laden if he was killed and a second to deal with him if he was captured alive. U.S. officials now say that Pakistani intelligence may have recently leaked the name of the CIA chief in Islamabad to local media in retaliation over the raid that killed bin Laden. Pakistan's prime minister came to the defense of his agencies yesterday, calling allegations of complicity, quote, absurd.
No other country in the world and no other security agencies has done so much to interdict Al-Qaeda than the ISI and our armed forces.
Gosh, the Prime Minister also said that Pakistan reserves the right to retaliate with full force if its sovereignty is violated again. Despite a strained U.S.-Pakistan relationship, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney stressed the need to maintain it.
The United States and Pakistan have an important, complicated relationship, as we've said. The cooperation that we've had with Pakistan has been important for years now in our fight against terrorism and terrorists. And more terrorists have been killed on Pakistani soil because of that cooperation than anywhere else in the world. And that's important to note.
Congressman Kingston, the White House has been very careful not to be publicly critical of Pakistan. The White House knows we need Pakistan, but you have to have some grave concerns about Osama bin Laden hiding in plain sight 35 miles outside Islamabad for 5-6 years.
Well, you know, as a member of the Defense Committee, I am concerned, yet as we just saw, our relationship with Pakistan makes our relationship with France look normal. It is a complicated relationship, and we deal with them on different levels. There's levels of cooperation, and then there's levels where we go our separate ways, and it's very frustrating. They get something like $3 billion in aid a year from us, but they're very strategically important, geographically, they're nuclear capable. You know, it's like a shoe with a stone in it. It's the only shoe you have, and you got to walk in it. And so I don't think it's great to just denounce Pakistan and let this rip us apart. We have to stay engaged with them.
No, and Congressman Flake, I don't think anybody wants to denounce them and dismiss them out of hand, because we do need them. Right. So how do you manage a relationship where it does seem you have 2 or maybe 3 tracks? You have the government, you've got the ISI, and then retired military. How do you manage that relationship?
Well, it's always been complicated, we know that. But now there's a new level. I mean, when you have the most wanted terrorist in the world hold up just miles, if that, from major military installations, and with the claim that we knew nothing about it, it's a new level now. But certainly you've got to move ahead knowing that they have nuclear weapons, and then you have to deal with that. So it's complicated, but this is more difficult than it's been before. This is a new level, certainly.
But some of it is also the Middle Eastern, where, you know, we've done them a favor to the degree that they did not know about it, but they have to huff and puff in public to their Middle Eastern allies. And so a lot of this is just the Middle East at its finest, but it's center stage, and most of us don't realize it. It goes on daily on micro levels and on macro levels.
You know, both you gentlemen are on the Appropriations Committee. I have a question about how we're paying for this war. And the question is, how are we paying for this war?
About $2 billion a week.
We haven't gone to the American public and saying, you know, hey, we need an extra $1 from you a week to pay for this war. We're in a long war on terror. We've been in it for 10 years, might be in it for another 10. How do we pay for it?
You know, this war has done little to disturb somebody's daily trip to Starbucks or their daily life in any degree. I have the honor of representing a lot of military and have attended a lot of funerals and so forth, but if you're outside of a military area, you don't realize it. So, but I think that one of our biggest problems has been in Afghanistan that we seem to be there 10 years, 1 year at a time. And what I hope is that with the capture and the elimination of Osama bin Laden, that we're in a new area that maybe we can say, okay, is it time to come home? Have we done as much as we can do? And a year ago I was there and talked to General McChrystal, and he said, you know, if we haven't made progress by December 2010, I'm going to recommend to the President we cut our best deal and go home. And I think we need to start talking about, okay, where is the end game at this point?
To me, that's the debate. But in Washington, the debate's over the debt ceiling and these deadlines with it, which I want to question you, too, about. Lawmakers are renewing efforts to hammer out a deal on the deficit. Members of the Gang of Six are set to meet with Vice President Biden today. And President Obama is also expected to hold separate talks with Senate Democrats and Republicans later this week. In a speech in New York last night, John Boehner reiterated his calls to rein in spending.
It's true that allowing America to default would be irresponsible, but it would be more irresponsible to raise the debt limit without simultaneously taking dramatic steps to reduce spending and to reform the budget process. Let me be as clear as I can be. Without significant spending cuts and changes in the way we spend the American people's money, there will be no increase in the debt limit. We're not talking about billions here. We should be talking about cuts in trillions.
All right, in comments meant to counter Speaker Boehner's speech, Senator Chuck Schumer said this, quote, Mr. Boehner needs to have that adult moment right here and now. This next speech by the Speaker will be a litmus test on whether House Republicans plan to finally approach the debt ceiling as adults. The U.S. is expected to reach its $14 trillion debt limit in less than a week, but Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner has said he'll be able to stave off default until August 2nd.
Congressman Flake, has the threat been overstated by Democrats, by the White House, of what will happen if the debt ceiling comes? Because it seems like John Boehner and perhaps the two of you are prepared to allow the debt ceiling to go by.
We've let it go by before. You can't let it go by for very long. We've got to address it. I think everybody knows that. But I agree with Speaker Boehner. It would be irresponsible to kick the can down the road again. At some point, the markets are going to recognize that we're not a good credit risk. I think you've seen the first inklings of that with the S&P rating. So unless we actually get serious here, and that means tying significant spending caps and spending cuts to the debt limit increase, then we're not having an adult moment. So I think that was a good speech. I think he's right. It's got to be trillions. He didn't exactly specify over what time period those trillions would be saved. But we've got to tie spending caps, spending cuts to the debt limit increase. Wouldn't
an adult moment include the thought that the Bush tax cuts, you've got to repeal them, you've got to go back and get some of that revenue back into the...
Isn't it only fair?
Wouldn't that be part of the adult moment?
I'm not sure why the President extended those. You know,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And I personally voted against extending them. But I think that what is important, though, part of this adult conversation has to be, Mr. President and Senator Schumer, where is your alternative? The only serious plan that's on the table right now is the Paul Ryan Republican plan that we put on the table that takes a stab at reforming entitlements, which is, you know, what the Speaker kept saying is that you have to change the entitlements. 60% of the budget really is in military spending, retirement spending, and in health care, and we always want to dance around those, but it's the adult conversation is let's put these on the table and have a discussion.
Both sides need to do it.
And we should point out that both of them voted against Speaker Boehner's CR last month, so they don't walk lockstep with the Speaker at all times.
And both of us voted against the extension of the tax cuts because the entire deal was a bad deal. But the tax cuts, keep in mind, this is on the margins. If you took every ounce of income that everybody over $250,000 pays, every ounce, 100%, you'd raise about $1.1 trillion total. And obviously you can't do that. And so when you're talking about raising the marginal rate, as the President is talking to, we're talking about small potatoes when it comes to what we need to do to get rid of this deficit. It's spending, and it's entitlement spending. It's also defense spending. It's across the board. We've got to cut.
There were reports last week that perhaps Congressman Ryan and others in the Republican Party were ready to step back from the idea to partially privatize Medicare. Were those reports accurate? And if so, what's the plan to deal with Medicare?
What it is a premium support system, and it actually moves us towards means testing, because it says that if you are unable to pay, if you're not in a good income situation, that you get more of a support than somebody who does not need it. So I don't think they're backing away at all. And keep in mind, this is the plan that John Kerry and Senator Breaux introduced in 1999, and the Democrats, including the Clinton Medicare advisors at the time, said this is a reasonable alternative. So, you know, it's typical Washington business as usual, that here's a plan that was a Senator Kerry, John Breaux plan. We're embracing it, and now the Democrats are saying, no, it's bad. It's privatization and all the evil stuff that comes with it.
Congressman Ryan went to, I think, 19 town halls during the break. I went to several myself. I went to Leisure World in Arizona to sell the Ryan budget, and I can tell you it sells. If you talk to people and let them know the problems and say, do you want these programs to be around for your kids and grandkids, they know that you've got to change them. They know it, and it's time to have that adult moment all over the country.
What would happen at Leisure World in Arizona if you raise the issue of means testing for Social Security?
Well, that's fine. I mean, they understand that this doesn't apply to anybody over age 55. I say to them, if you qualify to live in Leisure World, this does not affect you. That's the first thing. And then second, if you want these programs to be around, Medicare, for example, unless those who favor the status quo favor its extinction, because it goes away in just 10 years unless we change it. And they understand that. I think people are ready to hear the truth. And I think that's what the Ryan budget does, and we ought to stick to it.
If you're 55 years or older, it does not affect you. But you know, on means test, and one of the things that comes up frequently in town hall meetings is your contribution to Social Security is capped at $106,000 a year. If you remove that, you don't really solve Social Security's problem. But I think if you put it on the table as part of the reform and discussion, it's the proper thing to do. But keep in mind, one of the things that keeps Social Security alive is its universal usage. And if you start doing means testing, then it becomes somewhat similar to another entitlement welfare type program, and it will erode a lot of the political support for it.
How much of our financial issues, difficulties right now are tied up in the fact, according to some people, that our tax system, our tax code, is so antiquated that it really hasn't been looked at, adjusted in terms of 2011 priorities and living standards in years. It just hasn't.
It's a big part of it. And whenever you have to clean out the attic every once in a while, and that's the case for the tax code. We've gone a couple of decades before we've had major tax reform, and every year you have people coming to Washington wanting a special break. It's full of them now, and so you could get rid of a lot of tax expenditures and subsidies and credits and deductions and lower the overall rates and still raise more revenue.
Why is this such a challenge? I mean, to address the issue and look at it as, especially the tax issue on the very wealthy.
Because so many people come into Washington and want their special break and want to keep it. And that's it.
Yeah.
Yes, and I last night at this Monday meeting in New York City, I do what I do all over South Georgia. I asked the audience, how many of you filled out your own tax return this year? And you know, you get 10% of the audience. How many of you paid somebody to have your tax return filled out?
Thank you.
90%. And so, you know, all that is a tax in itself if you're having to pay an accountant or a lawyer to figure out what you owe Uncle Sam.
I mean, how do you explain back home to people that, you know, no matter what you are in this country, there's a special interest that represents you in your offices and it affects the tax code? Left-handed people wearing yellow shirts, right?
Well, except for
who want to wear a blouse instead.
Shouldn't be wearing those shirts. Your wife called. Congressman Jack Kingston and Congressman Jeff Flake, thank you so much.
Thanks,
we appreciate it.